Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're here for another legal live stream show. And today the special guest again is my friend, attorney Dominique Williams, who has his own law practice in Raleigh, North Carolina. He specializes in personal injury cases. And so we're going to add him onto the stream. He's also a distinguished alumnus of North Carolina Central Law School. So later on, he'll talk to us more about his experience there. So thank you for being here, Dominique.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, sure. And now, the camera looks a lot better than the last time when you were in that hotel with
much better.
like too far down or something. Yeah. So better. Cool. Well, there are so many things that you could talk to our viewers about, but we're going to tailor it to just a couple of issues today. So okay. Do you want to go ahead and tell us, if we're in a car accident, which seems to happen to everybody sometime in their lives, if not multiple times, what do you do if you're in a car accident and it's not your fault?
Yes, really good question. So what do you do if you're in a car accident? The first thing is make sure that you are safe. Don't just get out on the road, because at times it's very busy traffic. And I've had clients to call me and say, well, I almost got hit by oncoming car. So make sure it's safe before you get out the vehicle. And once you make sure it's safe, if you can, get out and try to gather evidence. Now, I don't mean pick up your bumper from the road, but we all have smartphones, so you can take video of the scene. The police officers do recommend, if the accident is not real severe, to move your vehicle. But before you move your vehicle, you want to make sure that you capture the scene, right? Because oftentimes people will change their stories after you go and you call the insurance company, and the other driver may say, well, no, he or she did this. It was their fault, when at the scene they admitted to it being their fault. So you always want to record if possible and gather evidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so do you recommend going up to the other driver immediately, assuming the person is at fault? Sometimes you could be the one at fault, right?
Yes, of course. Well, again, make sure it's safe, because we have a lot of personalities out there, and you have to gauge that other person. And it's not necessary to even talk to that person. Oftentimes, the evidence from your recording will speak for itself. For an example, if they hit you from behind, usually that will speak for itself. But if you can get them on video, and you don't have to tell them, like, look at my camera, you could just, walk around your phone, your car, and record your car and the evidence, and they may say something that is captured on video, right? Or like something like, oh, I did not see you. I was looking down at my cell phone. My daughter was talking to me. I was looking back. And that way you have that on video if possible. So yeah, you can talk to them directly, but it's not necessary.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And then would you recommend that the person that you immediately call the police?
I always want to police. Now, again, police officers, they are very busy, obviously. And if it's not a serious accident, you may wait for an hour or two. I'm getting that a lot lately, especially in Cary, Wake Forest, people call 911. And when they call me, they tell me, well, the officer had me waiting for 2 hours.
Oh.
Right? Because it's happening a lot more lately. So be prepared for that. But for me, I am a believer in having an accident report, right? So I'm a big believer in that. So I always say call the police, even if you have to move your vehicle to a parking lot or a gas station. Again, before you move, record the scene if possible.
Mm-hmm. I see. Well, isn't it much harder to win on a claim if there's not even an officer report? Like, let's say the people are both busy and they're like, yeah, here's my insurance information, and then they drive off. Does that really hurt someone's case, not having a police officer show up to do a report?
Very much so. Now, if the other person is honest, which often they are not honest to their insurance company. They go home and they think about it, and they say, well, maybe that person did do this, right? And they change their story, and now you don't have an officer's report, and that becomes an issue pretty quickly. So when they call me, if it's a he said, she said, without any evidence, there's nothing I could do for them.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay. And so should people ask directly for the other person's insurance, or should you just wait for the police officer to ask for that?
The police officer will always get it. And again, I always
Mm-hmm.
recommend to call a police officer, even if you have to wait. Now, in some cases, you may be late for a meeting, so you may not have a choice. And if that's the case, you want to get their insurance information, right? But if an officer is coming, he or she will obtain the insurance information.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Yeah, I actually was rear-ended one time. It was very, very mild, but the guy that hit me, he was actually a former principal of Enloe High School, and he got into his car acting like he was going to get his insurance information, and then he just drove away.
Wow.
But the good thing is that I had a pen and paper already ready in my hand, so I looked at his license plate and wrote it down. So I was able to tell the police later on, this is the license tag number of that man that hit me, and then just drove away. And of course, nothing bad happened to him because he lied to the police officer later and said that, oh, you know, he made some excuse, like thinking like, oh, you know, we thought that we had already resolved it, or some bogus excuse. I was really mad that the guy was not even charged with just fleeing the scene of an accident. You know, the ethics of that.
Yeah, it happens all the time, unfortunately, you know, for a reason. You know, typically the person doesn't have insurance. They may have a warrant for their arrest. They don't want their insurance to go up.
Yeah.
Whatever reason it may be, it happens all the time. The good thing about that, if you were unable to, I guess you can say it's good, but in a way it's bad because your insurance rate may go up. But let's say, for an example, in your case, if you were unable to obtain his information, you could file a claim on your own insurance, but your rate will go up. But at least you can get your car repaired that way. And I have to do that all the time. It's called uninsured motorist. So that even applies when the person drove off or is unidentified.
Mm-hmm. I see. And can people get attorneys in those situations? Because how would you get paid as an attorney?
Yes, I recommend that you do it. Well, it depends on your injuries, right? If your injuries are minor or only property damage, you don't need an attorney. But if you have injuries, you have a injury claim. So you do need an attorney because even your insurance company will look at you as if you are not their insured. They will make you prove the elements of your case to them. And the most important element typically would be your damages. You know, how were you injured as a result of this hit and run? So you still have to present your case to them as if you are presented to the adverse insurance company. Now, your own insurance company has a duty of good faith to you, right? But duty of good faith doesn't mean they have to pay what you ask for. So,
yeah, I see. Well, when would you advise somebody to get help from an attorney?
I say this all the time.
Yeah.
I say this all of the time when people call me, that sometimes the best advice I can give you is that you do not need an attorney. You can, you know, you sound intelligent. You know, often they are very intelligent people. And I say, look, this is all you have to do. The general rule is if you just went to the ER or urgent care, typically you do not need an attorney, right? If you just went to the chiropractor, I see people who did not go to urgent care or ER and they went to chiro only. And typically my recommendation is you do not need an attorney for that. If you go to the ER and the chiropractor and maybe physical therapy, typically I think you are in that zone that you do need an attorney.
Okay. What about chiropractors? I always got the impression that the insurance adjusters just discounted if you went to see a chiropractor, they won't even pay for all of the chiropractor's costs.
Well, yes. And the reason that is, it's all about the potential jury, right? And so insurance companies look at your case as if, what would a reasonable jury do in your scenario, right? And if you only go to a chiropractor, no ER, no EMS, and you go to a chiropractor and your bill is $8,000, you are not going to get that paid in full by the insurance company. But typically, in my cases, the insurance company will pay all of a chiro bill, because also I'm there to advise my client. When I look at my calendar and I say to myself, well, this person has been going to the chiropractor now for 2 months. Let me call them up and see what's happening. So I could, advise them to, you might want to wrap this up, right? So, yeah.
And then do you often advise the client also to make sure they're seeing like a real orthopedic practice, like a real MD also in addition?
It depends on the injuries. Often in soft tissue cases, you have ER or urgent care and chiropractor. I mean, that's a standard case that most PI are trying to see, honestly. But it depends on your injuries. I cannot refer a client to an orthopedic doctor. But what I do in those cases, if a client tells me I'm having muscle weakness, and I know that a chiropractor typically doesn't treat for muscle weakness, or whatever weakness it may be, strength in a body part, I would tell them, well, maybe you should see an orthopedic doctor. First, go see your primary care physician so they can give you a referral. And that's typically the way that happens.
I see. Yeah. And so what can potential clients or clients do to make your job easier?
Keep me up to date with medical treatment. Call me or text me and just let me know what's happening, throughout the course of your medical treatment. That's very helpful to me. And that way I know when to request medical records and medical bills. If you are going to a chiropractor and you don't tell me you are done with the medical treatment until a month after you are done, now your case is delayed, right? So that's one of the main things a client can do. And also, I say follow my advice. Typically I would be very upfront with clients. I don't, sugarcoat. My philosophy is to be respectful but honest, and I will, from the very beginning of a case, try to see things that may come up in your case. Each case is different, so I always try to give advice. And I just recommend you, if you are going to not listen to my advice, at least give me some heads up so I know how to react from there.
Yeah.
Well,
have there been a lot of times where the person didn't like the settlement offer and then you had to tell them that this isn't worth filing a lawsuit over?
It happened twice today with me.
Oh, wow.
It happens all the time.
Oh.
Again, I always try to be honest and give that advice, because again, like I tell my clients, a lawsuit is a business decision. It is not personal. You have to look at your case and say, is it a good chance? Because there is never a guarantee what a jury may do. I think we all know that by watching court TV or these criminal trials on TV. You never know with a jury. So I look at a case before I file suit as a simple business transaction. And it's my job to advise the client about that. Well, how much do I predict it is going to cost you a medical testimony, because you need doctors to testify on your behalf? How long will this take? What is the time value of money? And what are the chances that a jury would give you more? So that's a decision, a conversation I have multiple times a week with my clients.
Yeah, definitely. You have to have a lot of really tough conversations with people that might try to argue with you or get upset because they didn't get as much money as they thought they were hoping to get. Yeah. What about lost wages? Yeah, do you have any tips as to how people can document their lost wages?
Yeah, well, for W-2 employees, it's very easy. Typically, I will email the client a form they can submit to their HR or to their supervisor. And it's a pretty simple form. And typically, I tell my client, why don't you just fill this form out yourself, take it to your boss, and just have them to confirm that it's accurate and just sign and date it. And that's typical for W-2 employees. But if you are self-employed, it becomes very difficult. It's an absolute nightmare, right? So for self-employed people, you need to show a long history, typically a year. Sometimes the insurance company will even get 2 years of your tax returns. And they will average, like when you buy a house, they would take 2 years tax returns, divided by 24, and say these are your average weekly wages, or monthly wages divided by 4 weekly. But you need documentation. And if you do not pay taxes. And I have this conversation all the time with clients. They say, well, I get paid under the table, or I do this on the side. Well, you cannot go to court and say this in open court that I don't pay my taxes. So I just say you cannot claim that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just because you're a tax cheat, live by the sword, die by the sword, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So documentation. And typically you want a doctor to remove you from work. Do not just say, I'm not going to go to work without a doctor's note, because if so, most likely the insurance company is not going to pay you back for those wages.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, that's great to hear. So I guess that's in a nutshell, what to do if you're in an auto accident. Always document everything, take lots of pictures of the vehicle, of the scene, make sure you get information about the person that hit you, right?
Yes.
So,
yep.
Okay, cool. Well, Tony has a question. So this will kind of segue into the second topic for tonight, which is whether more Black and people of color students should consider going to law school. So he asks, what were the influences in your past that got you into law, and what led you want to master the legal process?
I think I said this the last time, Judy, we had this conversation. My mom, when I was 5 years old, would tell me, you are going to law school. And that kind of stuck and resonated with me. But it wasn't the final factor, obviously. But I do remember her, pushing me along when I was a kid. But, the main reason, actually, before going to law school, I was a mortgage loan officer. And my goal was to go and just do home closings because I was very familiar with that industry. But then I realized pretty quickly, that's I want some Perry Mason in my life. Right. That was way too boring for me. So I decided not to do that. But I spent years also doing criminal defense, and I really wanted to give back as much as I could in that sector or that area of law as well. I don't do much of any more criminal defense, but to me, that was really rewarding. So that was another reason I wanted to give back to, the community as well in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how did you even get in that mortgage loan profession after college?
Initially I did a couple years of engineering at NC State, and then I changed my majors to management information systems, but I never worked in those areas at all. Honestly, after undergrad, I was looking for a job, and, I was doing a lot of interviews, and, I saw that come up on the computer, and I was like, hey, it's in the business sector, I guess. So I got licensed and I started doing that. I did that for about 4 years prior to law school.
Yeah. That it sounded like, you were doing pretty well in that, but like you said, I guess it got kind of boring after a while. So
yeah, it was boring. Plus I could see the market, kind of going downward as well, because I was in it during that time before the 2008 crash. Right. So I could see the changes and the new banking laws and the new programs and the changes in the banking industry. And, I was like, well, it's time for me to get out while I can. So let me pursue my dreams of law school.
Cool. Okay.
And then my wife also encouraged me as well. She was like, go do it now.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Well, I'm sure she's very proud of you. Okay. So he also asked, what are the dream things for a client to have prepared? Any red flags? Well, ideally, you want the client to already have all their medical information handy, just have all the information already written out at least, right?
Yes, definitely. So typically before I meet with a client via Zoom or in person, I will have some telephone conversation with them first, and I will tell them what to bring with them. I need this, this, and this. And, typically my clients will, even potential clients will bring me that list. Judy, going back to, clients being upset about what they are going to get in the case, that's a conversation I have from day one, because I could read a case pretty good, right? And I would tell that client or potential client, my favorite phrase is, this is not going to be a pot of gold, right? There's no pot of gold at the end of this rainbow. It's going to be a pretty low case, if it's going to be, that is. And, you may walk away from this feeling, man, this is it. But just know I will do all I can for you. I will make sure your medical bills are paid, and, you will you will net more than anybody else is always my goal here. And, you know, and they respect that. And they like, you know, and I bring it up when I'm telling them towards the end of their case. Remember, I told you this.
Yeah. So the red flags, I mean, one red flag to me would be if the person is really close to the statute of limitations, or they've already shopped around their case from, you know, or they already had multiple attorneys. That's usually a big red flag.
Yes, those are, you know, I do not mess around with the statute of limitations. I have people to call me and say I have a month or, you know, even a couple of months. And I'm so busy now, I just can't get caught up in that issue, right? So I would quickly say no and send them an email or a text to say, nice talking to you, but I cannot help you, right?
Yeah, because normally I think they still do this, right? Like a lot of personal injury firms will just immediately send out ads to people who have been in car accidents. So people are usually flooded with a bunch of ads in the mail from different personal injury law firms within a week or two of being in a car accident. So it is kind of suspicious to me if anybody, you know, back when I did do personal injury, you know, still didn't have an attorney and they're like, oh, you know, I got to file a lawsuit by next week or something like that.
Exactly. I do agree. And for me, the personality is also a red flag. You know, I think I mentioned to you last time, Judy, I'm too old to get caught up in dealing with any conflicts with a client. So I try to read the personality as well. You know, I would actually say no to a client who has a pretty decent case just to not have to deal with any issues I foresee with that person. You know, I'm just like, I'm not the right person for you. You know, I'm always respectful and honest, but I would just decline the case if I get some, you know, some personality issues I see may come up.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. So Jonathan asked, what were the elements of criminal defense that you found rewarding?
Well, so I used to do a lot of court appointed PrimD. I mean, that was, I would say, over 90% of my cases. So that means the person who I represented did not have money to hire or retain a private attorney. So when I did that, I was not working for the public defender's office. I still had my own law firm. But what would happen is if there was a conflict in the public defender's office, or if they did not have the capacity to take the case, they would send it out to a private attorney. So that, to me, that was really rewarding because I would tell my clients, I'm going to represent you the same way as if you came and paid me $2,000 for this case. You are going to get the same representation. So that, to me, that was really rewarding.
Okay, great. Okay, and Joanne is here. Thank you for watching. Hi. Okay, what's a civil rights lawsuit? Are there types of personal injury suits that are for violation of civil rights? Well, I mean, I did one case a long time ago, which was a housing discrimination case. So, you know, the client had wanted to rent out like a mobile home that was on the land, and the person that owned the land called up the owner of the mobile home and got all mad and said on an answering machine recording, which we had, you know, like, I don't want any Black people living on my property, you know. So that was kind of slam dunk. And of course, they kept acting like they were poor and they had no money. But lo and behold, they came up with enough money to settle the case. So that's just one example of a civil rights type lawsuit. Others would be like employment discrimination cases, which I also handle. You know, of course, sometimes people do like police excessive force or prison brutality type cases.
Yes. So I've done police misconduct cases. I've done also school misconduct, school employees misconduct cases. So prison misconduct cases as well.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess there are times when it's pretty egregious and you can get a good settlement for your client, or, you know, think that it's good enough for a trial. Yeah, but most of my cases ended up settling.
Yes, they tend to settle, but typically the state will prolong those cases and fight them. You know, in my experience, anyways, they will fight them, and I always tell my clients to make sure you buckle your seatbelt.
It's do you still do those?
Every blue moon. I just settled a case against a school board last year, in fact.
Oh.
Yeah, so I take them all. You know, it's really based on the facts, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, so what happened with that case, the case against the school board?
It was a minor who was molested on the school
Oh,
bus by another student,
oh,
and he was not properly supervised. And the other student was much older than this child.
oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrible. Is the case still going on, or is it over?
No, it resolved. The older kid was charged and convicted.
Mm-hmm.
But and then I filed a civil suit against the school board.
Mm-hmm. I see. Oh, well, that's interesting to hear because I didn't know you did those types of cases. So,
Well, I don't advertise it. Again, it's really based on if someone calls me and I listen to the facts and I'm like, okay, I think there needs to be some justice here in that case.
mm-hmm.
But I don't advertise it because I rarely take them.
Yeah, yeah, but I'm sure you get a lot of like ongoing subsequent referrals, like you talked about in the previous live stream, where your clients, like relatives, then refer you something. So,
All the time. Yes.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to our other topic for tonight, which was going to be, should more Black students or people of color go to law school? So before we delve into your thoughts on that, I did want to bring up some statistics that I found through dear old Google about law school debt. So There's this website called educationdata.org, and it has some new information saying that the average law school graduate owes $160,000 in student loan debt. Meanwhile, law school enrollment is at its lowest point since 1973. And I mean, this was very shocking to me because I just saw it tonight. It says that Black or African-American law school graduates' student loan debts are 97% higher on average than white law school graduates. And 15% of law school students and just 5% of practicing lawyers are Black or African-American. Hispanic or Latino graduates owe 49% or more, or 49% more on average than their white peers. 13% of law school students and 5% of lawyers are Hispanic or Latino. On average, white law school graduates owe 17% less than the average law school student debt. So, well, it says there's not enough data available to measure the average debt amongst Asian students. But that's crazy that, the Black students' debts are 97% higher on average than the white law school.
But it doesn't surprise me. I mean, that's, every sector of life for our community. It comes from, and this is my opinion, and I do consider myself to be somewhat well-read, but just generational, right? I mean, many Black students do not have parents to say, okay, I'm going to pay for your undergrad. Number one, right? Mm-hmm. We go to undergrad and we collect debt. And then we want to pursue our dreams of going to law school and we collect debt. And then when we graduate, we have all that, so I'm no exception to the rule, right? I mean, I graduated law school with a ton of debt. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Did you have debt from undergrad?
Not much. I had a lot of scholarships. I had roughly in the mid 20s, $1,000 in debt. But that's not bad for 5 years at NC State. I was in a 5-year plan.
Okay. Yeah. And then you were an in-stater at North Carolina Central Law School, which is actually cheaper than UNC Law School for in-staters. So that's a pretty good value, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. But the issue for me, it wasn't the tuition, it was living while in law school. So I had to take out more in student loan to just live, pay my mortgage, to eat and gas. Back then, gas was like $4 per gallon. And I was driving from Raleigh to Durham every day, essentially. Oh. If you remember, gas went up very high back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had to live. But the tuition is, to me, the best deal in the state because many of our graduates, you see, we have many judges, we have prosecutors, we have very successful attorneys from NC Central. But again, many of us don't have any parents or the background to assist us with debt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So your parents were not able to give you anything to help you along during law school?
Just support. I mean, like not financial support, but just you can do it.
Okay.
I mean, and that helped.
Okay. But so did you think about doing the evening program and continuing to work while you went to law school? Because Central does have a very well-known evening program.
Yes, and I actually applied for that program, but I did not get in. I mean, it's much more difficult because you have so many working people applying for that program.
Mhm.
And, I just did not get in. I got into the day program, obviously. But yeah, I did so I could continue to work. But no, I
Mhm.
did not get in.
Okay. And then did you work while you were in law school, like your second and third years?
Actually, you don't supposed to work first year, but I did. And when I quit, I was working at UPS third shift. So I
Oh,
would go into UPS at 3:30 a.m.,
oh,
leave there 6:30, 7 o'clock, go home, shower, go straight to school. And I did that for almost my entire 1L year. I mean, I think I quit maybe like 3/4 of the way in.
oh.
Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah, that sounds exhausting.
I
I
was a
mean, when did
zombie.
you sleep?
I was
Huh?
a zombie. I was a walking zombie. I'm telling you.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds like a lot of sacrifice. And then do you recall like how much your student loans were when you graduated from law school?
I mean, total between undergrad and law school, it was over 100K. I mean, it wasn't 160. I think you mentioned 160 was the average but it was
For
over
law school.
100K. Yes,
Mhm. Yeah, although when did you graduate? Like 2010?
2009. You froze up on me.
Okay, I'm here. Are you there?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it just froze for a few seconds. Yeah.
Yep.
So you graduated sometime around 2010, right?
2009.
Oh, 2009. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and so you had a little over 100,000 in debt.
Yes.
And how did you pay it off? How did you manage it?
Working and building up my practice to a point where I could afford to pay it. When I first graduated, I was deferring my payments, obviously, because I couldn't afford it. I was studying for the bar. And even when I started my first job, I mean, that first payment they sent me was over $2,000. And I was like, I can't pay this. So you just defer it. And then you just keep accumulating interest, obviously. And my goal was to pay it off. But yeah, just years of success in my practice. It took time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how does deferment work? Is everybody allowed to defer it for a certain amount of time?
Well, it depends on your income. So you have to do an application, and I'm sure people listening, have gone through the same thing, unfortunately. But you have to apply for a forbearance or deferment. A forbearance is when you do not make any payments within that time frame. It could be a year, it could be 2 years, just based on you may not have a job, you have a medical emergency, whatever it may be. And a deferment is you are asking for a reduction in your payment, and it's based on your income and all those factors. You typically have to submit that application with pay stubs, maybe even tax returns, and then the Department of Education will let you know what you can pay. Even if you can't pay it, they will tell you this is what you can pay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and during that time, like if you were entitled to a tax refund, would your tax refund be automatically taken away to pay those loans?
No, as long as you are in good standing, no. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, good standing if you are making payments, if you are not in default, no. But if you do default, potentially, yes. I haven't gone through that, so I'm not sure. But if you are in good standing, no.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So how long did it take you to pay off your debt then?
I'm finishing up now.
Oh, okay. Finishing up now. Wow.
Yeah, I'm still finishing up. But I could pay it off today if I wanted to. But
Mm-hmm.
it's at a level now that's very manageable, and the interest is so low. I'm like, well, at this point, the interest is low because my balance is much lower. So
Yeah.
to me, I'm just making much bigger payments. It should be paid off very soon.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
glad things worked out for you because, like, do you know people from Central where going to law school didn't pay off for them?
Well, yes, well, when I say yes, I mean like maybe financially, it may be like their greatest achievement. Obviously, law school is tough, passing the bar is tough, but when it comes to income, definitely I know people who struggle now with income.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So how would you answer that? Like, you think more African American students or people in general that are not as well represented in the legal field should still go to law school these days?
Yeah, so I mean that's a really hard. My answer is yes, but it's hard because you want people to be happy financially as well, right? So to me, you have to do more planning before making that decision. Maybe talking to attorneys or just people in the professions. It could be like my wife, if she's a speech pathologist. Anybody in the professions who can give you advice on how to manage, how to set that up. So yeah, I do recommend it. Speaking of Google, I went and I did some research as well on the I guess the population of people of color in the profession. I'm just going to read some stats to you. According to the 2020 U.S. Census, the Blacks make up about 13% of the U.S. population. But according to the ABA, the American Bar Association, we only make up 5% of practicing attorneys. And just to keep going here, with other people of color, Asians, 2% of all lawyers are Asian, and 5.9% of all Americans are Asians. People Hispanic, 5% of attorneys are Hispanic, and they make up 18.5% of the population. I mean, according to this, the ABA, about 88% of practicing attorneys are white American. So yes, my answer is yes. And and my wife and I, we talk about this all the time. In this area, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, Greensboro, Charlotte, we are kind of spoiled, I would say, by the fact we have a lot of people of color in the professions. We see them when we go to court, we see them at work, but you step outside of Wake County. I've been in court throughout the state, and typically when I leave Wake County, I'm the only person of color in the courtroom.
Wow.
And that's between the attorneys, the judge,
the
bailiff,
the clerk.
The clerk.
Yeah.
So yes, we do need more people of color in the professions, because often clients will call me and say, I feel more comfortable talking to you about this because you are Black, right? Now, my clients are very diverse. If you breathe and you have a pulse, if you're a good person, I take you as a client. But some people seek me out because I'm Black, because they feel comfortable talking to me because I'm Black. So we do need more representation. And again, when you step outside of Wake County, and it's very
Durham.
in Durham, in Charlotte, these larger counties, it's very hard for people of color to find representation, because again, either they don't feel comfortable talking to that 88% of the population who are white, or they just can't find someone to take their case, right? So I do think it's very important that we continue to go to law school. I mean, people of color are charged at a disproportionate rate in the court system, right? And we need more DAs. We need more people in a public defender's office who can understand that, right? So I do think so, but it's hard because now you have this debt weighing you down as you trying to do your job,
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I feel like there definitely are like plenty of private, really overpriced, low ranked law schools that are not going to be worth the money. So you don't just go to any law school that takes you, but rather you really have to look at the employment statistics, the employment outcomes, read on Reddit, try to talk to actual attorneys that recently graduated from those schools to see how hard the job market is. Depends on what city you're in.
Yeah. And, and my thing is, don't go to law school thinking you are going to be rich. You hear this all the time, growing up, and I mean, it's a very good profession, but there are many other professions, even engineers,
Mm-hmm.
you typically make more money starting off than many attorneys
Or nurses.
and speech pathologists, my wife, right? So don't do it because you think you are going to make all this money, but the need is there. I mean, we need the representation, and the people in the community. So we need it. Going into like the public sector, DA's office, the public defender's office, those are very important, in my opinion, to people of color.
Yeah, that's right. And in all sectors, you can make a difference, like working in the federal government, working for the EEOC, representing the city, doing government work. There's just like so many ways where people could potentially make a difference, but you have to be able to get the job in the first place, pass the bar exam and get the job. Yeah.
Exactly. And even in personal injury, I tell my friends all the time who come to me and say, I want to start my practice. You have any advice? And I say, learn personal injury, learn to do disability law, because often when I go to Superior Court, even in Wake County Superior Court, typically, and Judy, you may see this yourself, there's not many people of color in there.
Yeah, it's mostly like older white men. It's like really weird. It's like calendar call for Superior Court. Okay, there's like no diversity here.
Exactly, no diversity. So I tell my friends all the time, learn that area. Again, I get a lot of referrals because often people will seek out a person of color to represent them.
Mm-hmm. I see. What about mentorship? Do you feel like, I know there in Wake County, we have the Capital Lawyers Association for, African-American attorneys. Do you feel like you had mentors to guide you?
Yes. And I'm trying to think if I had mentors from like all backgrounds, not just Black, but I had mentors from, even my old boss, Hardison Wood. I think he was a great mentor at the time. And then I think Central did a good job, because going to Central, I was fortunate to have a good amount of Black male attorneys to even teach me law. Mm-hmm. And those to me were the greatest mentors. I mean, Dean Pierce, Dean Green, I could, and the list goes on, of the people who really sat down and gave me that real world advice as a Black man in the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Oh, and this is a kind of an older comment, but this person says he's impressed by, or I think it's a he or she. I'm impressed by your work ethic, grit. I would hire you as a lawyer any day. Okay, well, remember his website, wilsonwilliams.com, but I think you mainly practice in North Carolina, right? Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much.
And Hidden Gem says, yes, go into the profession because it's your passion, not for the money. Yeah.
Exactly.
And on that same note, that's why it's so important to keep your student debt load down, because I do hear of some young people who took out over $300,000 of student loans to go to law school. And I'm like, what, is Harvard even worth $300K in debt? I don't think so, Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. Do not, and that's what I'm saying, have that mentor before you decide to go to law school, because debt will ruin you. It will make you stay up at night, even if you have that good job that you dream about. It may not pay what you like, but you are happy with the substantive work. But now you have, as soon as, I once saw a meme on Facebook, I think, where it was this person on like this island somewhere in the middle of the ocean. It was no one around them. It was just that one person, and they opened up a bottle with a note in it. And it was like, this is the U.S. Department of Education. We've been trying to contact you about your student debt. Right?
Yeah, you can't escape it. Yeah, well, that reminds me, like long time ago, I used to read this website called jdunderground.com. It was like a forum where people would complain about the profession. And every so often people would say, oh, I'm just going to run off to Thailand and teach English instead, screw these student loans, I'm going to disappear in some foreign country. But I don't know if anyone really did that. But yeah, that debt will follow you around forever, right?
It will follow you. But when you come back home and you apply for your mortgage, it's going to come up.
Yeah, or if you need to, get an auto loan.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's see. Oh, okay. This is a different question. Are you a Windows or Mac user, Android or iPhone? What computer programs do you use most as a lawyer?
So my wife is going to love that question because she is always trying to get me to switch from Android to iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all about Windows and I use a Note.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I just got a brand new Note 20 yesterday.
Oh,
But
great.
yeah, I'm a Windows and Android user.
Yeah. Yeah, same here. So that's what I use. So, okay, well, cool. Any parting thoughts or words of wisdom to anyone that might be thinking about law school?
Yes, don't go out and rack up a lot of debt. Not only student loans, but the fancy car. You don't need that now. Don't go out and rack up debt. You want to try because again, for me, I had to take out student loans to help live, not so much to pay my tuition, right?
Mhm.
And you don't have to go to Duke Law to be successful. I mean, I'm in court all the time with attorneys from all the law schools, and no one asked me what law school did you go to. If they did, I would happily tell them because I'm very
Mhm.
proud of NCCU.
Mhm.
You don't have to go to me, it's more about who you are. So build connections before going to law school, and that way you can be successful based on your connections.
Mhm. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for your time and everything. And if you think of any other hot button issue that you want to talk about, just let me know and we could turn this into the Dominique Williams show in case my viewers are sick and tired of seeing me all the time on these live stream shows.
It's
So,
always fun.
yeah. Okay, well, you can stay on for a couple of seconds, but I'll say goodbye to all the viewers out there. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next week for the next live stream show. Thank you.